Okay. Are we streaming this round?
Yep.
Guys, are you guys all right with these streams?
Yes. Oh, good.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much. All right. While we just get that set up, thanks, Ron. This will be the round of the weekend. So exciting. Well done all for making it this far, and I'm sure it's going to be a great round. And once we're ready to go, we'll get started.
Cool.
You're happy to do the timing.
Oh, is this enough
Room for like a...
Oh, phones.
Put it here, please.
Yeah, straight.
Put it just there.
Cool.
So sorry.
Alright, cool. Okay. Take it away when you're ready, and you're good to do the timing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet. Yeah, welcome everyone to this debate. I'd like to, I should read out. So the moot today is that this house regrets the rise of beauty routines, e.g. makeup, skincare, as part of self-care trends. I'd like to invite the first speaker of the affirming team to present their team's case.
I think self-care trends in the media are so important to have in this generation where we have terrible mental health, and just like when we are spreading awareness about that, I think it's really good to have self-care that is actually accurate and reflects what self-care is actually about. We do not get this in the current status quo, where we see self-care that is all about beauty routines and looking good. Now, 3 things that I would do for you in my speech. Firstly, on setup, which is like defining what we see as beauty routines, what we stand for, and the comparative. Secondly, on how this perpetuates toxic ideologies of self-care onto not only society, but specifically women. And thirdly, on how we see actual good representations of self-care on the comparative. Okay, so firstly, on like what we define as like beauty routine, like that type of trend. So we see this as like doing anything from like diets to like putting on makeup to doing skincare, or doing anything to enhance your physical appearance and physical attributes. We do not stand against these things internally in themselves. We do not stand against skincare or makeup. We stand against the trend of using beauty routines as the standard for self-care, because it negates what caring about yourself actually is, and it negates the actual reason why we have terrible mental health in the first place, and actually how we fix these problems. Okay, so on the comparative, what do we see this like? What is the likely comparative if beauty routines and self-care likely did not exist? Okay, well, we still see that there's still terrible mental health. That issue is not wiped out. So people are still likely to care about self-care trends because they want to actually know, how do you solve these issues? Except in the current status quo, they solve these issues by covering up with like makeup and doing things to enhance your physical appearance. So we see that the likely comparative is actually better advised, things like taking breaks, eating the food that you actually want to eat, and we see actual solutions come out because influencers want to provide those solutions as they see a rise in like a trend. I will take a POI.
What is beauty?
I think beauty is something that, like, this trend does not accurately reflect. And like the beauty routines don't actually reflect. They, like I have stated in my model, it is about enhancing your physical appearance when we are specifically talking about this motion. Okay, so moving on. How this trend perpetuates toxic ideologies of self-care onto women and onto society. So now I will talk about like self-care and actual pop culture. Well, usually the idea is that it's supposed to make people feel good. These videos are supposed to make people feel good. They're supposed to they usually talk about calming down after an episode, and it usually shows somebody doing their skincare. And people actually are very reliant on these media outlets to reach out for help. Specifically women, because they tend to be more like open with their emotions, and they're told like compared to men, like they're told like not to hide their feelings and stuff like that. So we see that this affects women more, especially because beauty routines and makeup is targeted towards women in the first place. So why is it that it perpetuates toxic ideologies of self-care onto women and society in the first place? Well, like, we see that these people who tend to watch these videos, like, tend to have like these mental health issues and tend to actually need self-care in the first place. So they tend to be very insecure and like reach out to the next media outlet that actually provides like solutions for them or provides things like that would help them, right? But what do we see in pop culture exactly? Who are the people who are actually most likely to be popular? Well, they're usually likely to be like skinny. They're usually likely to actually fit the beauty standard, and they're actually predominantly white, right? And like, so why is this so harmful? It's because they put on makeup, showing that they're so happy because of these beauty routines. But when girls who don't look like them wonder why they don't look like them, and they're looking at this and they're like, why don't I look like them? Why am I not happy like them? And it automatically sparks this like insecurity. And they think that they'll be happier if they do look like them, or if they do follow the same diets, follow the same makeup routines, follow the same skincare routines, which ultimately leads to worse mental health because you're doing harmful treatments, like following harmful diets that might not be for your body type, might be putting on harmful products onto your skin. So what are the impacts of this? Well, we see little girls like following like maybe these diets and actually getting like eating disorders. We see girls skipping meals, counting calories, little girls counting calories, skipping dinner, things like that. And that's ultimately a health harm, which is very important and should be weighted very heavily in this debate. And secondly, like, we also see girls buying makeup and relying on it to feel happy, but we all know that makeup is not what makes people feel happy. Skincare and looking good is not what makes people feel happy. So they eventually don't end up feeling happier. And they wonder why. They blame themselves. There's ultimately worse mental health on their side of the house. I will take a POI.
How is creativity fostered in teenagers?
So like, I think that's kind of irrelevant. So I'm just going to move on. Okay, so how do we see good representations of self-care on our side of the house? Okay, so like I've stated, like we already see people like listening to these self-care trends because without this trend, mental health doesn't automatically improve. We still see people suffering, and so people are still overly reliant on media sources to actually help like solve these issues, right? And because influencers like obviously are profit incentivized and want to like they want to sort of help these harms that we see in our youth amongst women, and we have people who actually relate to these harms. It is likely that these influences are going to be good and are going to look more like advice on problems that actually spread more awareness. So things like, maybe don't take male validation too seriously. Maybe things like, take breaks every once in a while. School isn't everything. Look after yourself, right? And so I think on our side of the house, people are actually likely to focus on what actually is the root cause of bad mental health, and what can you actually do to solve the root of the issue rather than covering it up with like physical appearance based things, right? So what is the outcomes of this, right? So when you're actually more aware of like what the causes are and how you can actually help like sort of like mitigate the causes and seek proper help, you're actually aware on what taking care of yourself looks like, which is an independent benefit we do not get on their side of the house. The impacts of this is we actually have more women supporting women on our side of the house. It is less about beauty and more about connection. We secondly have people being more like aware on what taking care of yourself looks like. It's not always about beauty all the time. What makes you beautiful isn't necessarily products. It is more so about what's on the inside, which the media does not show. And thirdly, we have little girls knowing that it's okay if you don't look a certain way. It's okay to feel upset. It's okay to take breaks. We have this benefit on our side of the house, as we do not have this on the negating side of the house, because people tend to cover up this mental health by actively romanticizing beauty routines. Proud to be a woman.
Aiden, I don't think the live stream is done. Oh.
Are you sure? Like
Harper's trying to watch it. So just-
Oh really? Okay. Well, I can sort that out briefly.
Oh,
I
okay.
can delay the speech, just like.
Yeah,
You can just sort that out and then show it. Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to welcome up the first speaker of the negating team to begin their team's case.
Historically, makeup and beauty routines have been used as a weapon of oppression. Team Hawke's Bay tells you that we must encourage and protect the rise of beauty routines for self-care. 3 points on this today. Firstly, how we empower minorities and other people and dismantle bad ideas within our society. Secondly, on accessibility of beauty routines. And thirdly, how producers will change to fit these trends, is what Isabella will be talking about in her split. Before I continue, 4 points of setup real quick. Firstly, what is self-care? It is anything done to make us feel better about ourselves, right? It's non-destructive habits that aid your mental and physical health quality. Like, could be brushing your teeth, or like that leads to other things like accepting yourself as a minority. These are all aspects of self-care, right? Secondly, what are beauty routines? It's things we do to make ourselves feel beautiful, right? This could be washing your face, like putting on sunscreen, or it could be using makeup and other products, right? Thirdly, where has this rise of these trends come from? We see as mental health and physical and spiritual health discussion is more normalised in our society. People realise that self-care looks like many different things, and we mostly see this rise on social media, stuff like TikTok, stuff like Instagram, right? Fourthly, I want to talk about what the world looked like before the rise of beauty routines as self-care. Beauty routines were used as a tool for self-deprecation, right? And often very harmful. Things like tanning beds and like eating tapeworms to make yourself feel skinny, right? It was not great before when we didn't use beauty routines for ourselves, for our own self-care. Right, before I continue, a few pieces of rebuttal. Firstly, the affirmative team talked about how we solve mental health issues at their root issue, right? We tell you that the people engaging in self-care sometimes do have mental health issues, right? But we also see self-care as used by everyone. It's important for everyone. This means that it's not only people with mental health issues using self-care. It looks like people taking care of themselves on the day-to-day to ensure they don't lead to mental health issues, right? It's an important tool for everyone and not just people with mental health issues, right? Also, on the people who are most likely to be promoting this self-care and beauty routine image, right? We heard from the affirming team that it's most likely to be skinny white people, right? We see that historically this has been the truth, right? On women's magazines, we saw on the front that this was very prominent. However, with the rise of beauty routines as self-care on places like TikTok, it looks like a more diverse group of people promoting self-care. It looks like people in different molds, not just this white skinny. We do not accept this characterization. They also told us that people can still participate in self-care under their side of the house. I will go on to explain why it's simply more accessible with this trend because more people know about it and why that's important. On to my first point about empowerment. When individuals are more empowered, it leads to acceptance within themselves and within society, right? The first point I'd like to discuss is the patriarchy. Before beauty routines were included in the self-care spectrum, they were used for a tool for predominantly women, right, to fit the male gaze. When it became something that we do for ourselves, due to the narrative that it's self-care, women now aren't only thinking about the male gaze, wearing tons of makeup to cover up to look good for men. Instead, we see it being used as a tool to make themselves feel better, using it to dress up and feel good about the way that they look, right? Second, on self-expression. Before makeup was normalised on these social media sites, where did we see it? We saw it on cis women and we saw it for the male gaze, stuff like magazines and all that. Right, now what do we get with it being self-care? It empowers trans people, gender diverse, can be a tool to make them look the way that they feel inside, right? This this trend that we see on social media means it's more popular, it's more normalized, and it means that people can feel comfortable wearing makeup or using other beauty things without the fear, right? On their side, without a trend, it is not normalized, and it's like a rare thing, and it's difficult for people to express who they are, and we can see this being perpetrated in transphobia and stuff like that, and a lot of this is internalized. Right, thirdly, on healthy habits, we believe people feel best when they treat themselves the best, right? So normalizing skincare as a part of self-care means people are more encouraged to drink water or wear sunscreen because they see it on TikTok all the time. They see it as a self-care, they see it as a benefit. You've suddenly got tangible physical benefits that make yourself feel better, that make society deem you as more beautiful, but it just has health benefits, right? On their side, people don't care about their physical and mental health until it's bad, right? They don't start wearing sunscreen until they've had a melanoma, right? We make it a trend so people do it more because it's normalized. Fourthly, on creativity, when we see makeup isn't just used for women to fit into society, it becomes a self-care trend because it's something we do for fun, right? This is cool because now we can fill our mediocre lives by getting up early in the morning and putting on purple eyeshadow and walking around and feeling like super scuts, right? It's something that gives us an opportunity to fuel our creative urges. Before its rise in popularity, makeup had to be used to fit the whims of other people. We get people's mental health improving after this point. We get people feeling secure in their skin, especially for trans and queer people. We get less internalized and externalized transphobia in our society because we see it being normalized. We see people's physical health improving. We see them prioritizing their health, drinking water, going outside. It isn't seen as excessive and dramatic, it's seen as important, right? We also dismantle gender ideals. We see that we're not following this narrative that has historically oppressed women and that their physical appearance is dictated by a man. I will take a PLR.
Earlier you stated that women wearing makeup has always been a net positive. Is it a positive for young women to be relying on makeup to make themselves feel good?
I didn't say that it's always been seen as a positive, but what we do see is that it can be a tool for young women to feel more comfortable in themselves, right? We're saying that it can make them, we're saying it can be used as a creative tool. We're not saying that all young women should be walking around with layers of foundation, but we're saying if they feel prettier with a little bit of blush, why are we stopping them? Why are we telling them that it's stupid? All right, on to my second point about accessibility, right? Beauty standards and beauty routines used to only be for certain groups. 3 reasons why this is better under our side. Firstly, makeup is cheaper. When something is a trend, right, markets are created for that product. This means face masks and eyeshadows and stuff like that. We get an influx of demand for it, right? So producers are mass producing this, right? This means that people have more access. This looks like poor people can buy makeup for cheap. This looks like trans people having easier access to it, right? So they can feel better about themselves. On the comparative, we see things like skincare and beauty as elitist, and you can only get it through spa treatments and expensive manicures. It becomes something that's reserved for the rich, and we do not want this, right? Secondly, on people of colour, we recognise that beauty standards have been Eurocentric, right? This looks like skin whitening products in South Korea and makeup brands having 5 shades. Before trends, this idea was only perpetrated, but now we have it on social media. More people are seeing this, right? And it dismantles the idea that you need to look different because we see different people promoting beauty. What this means is this social media sites are often putting pressure on brands to expand their shade ranges and stuff like that. We see people of colour are more included in the makeup industry now than they ever have before the rise of beauty standards and self-care. Thirdly, on cis men, right? The standards and narratives pushed on men is that skincare is only for girls, right? And they aren't reaping these benefits. This looks like men not using moisturizer. This looks like them not cleansing because it's emasculating, right? What we tell you is that it's good, right? It's a trend, it's normal, please wash your face. Producers of these products aren't ignoring men now. They're marketing properly, and society is more likely to accept it. We get more accessible, we get less beauty inequality, we see less exclusion of people of colour and other important groups, we get more products to more people so people can feel beautiful in themselves and appreciate self-care. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for that speech and now invite the second speaker from the affirming team to continue their team's case. Is the last room right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful water, my lips.
the negating team tries to paint this world where makeup and all these and self-care is something that a lot of women and all these other groups are using to make themselves feel better, feel beautiful, feel all these different types of emotions. Keyword: feel these emotions. Implying that they didn't already feel beautiful. It's the negating team that makes all these claims that women are using these to make them feel better about themselves. Again, feel better about themselves. We should be supporting a world where women, cis men, cis women, all these groups feel good about themselves without makeup. With makeup on, makeup off, regardless of what happens, women and all these other groups should be able to feel beautiful within themselves, look in the mirror and say that they love themselves and that they're beautiful and cool. Two things in this debate. Firstly, two classes. Which side actually benefits women's? Firstly, on the clash, which side actually benefits women's mental health? Secondly, on the split, which is how these portrayals of self-care negatively affect they portray self-care, or they are not accurate representations of self-care and are detrimental to people's mental health. Firstly, on the clashes, what we heard from the negating team is a lot about how in the past makeup was used as a weapon against women, and how now in the modern age it's used for women to feel better about themselves and to feel pretty, feel beautiful, all these things, wear purple eyeshadow, look skunks, walk around, and all these different ideas that we hear from the negating team on how makeup is used to make women and all these different groups feel comfortable with themselves. This is an example of these young girls that they say the first negating speaker replied to the POI saying that we're not telling these young girls to go out and like wear makeup, but they're saying they should if they want to wear it and feel better about themselves, then they should. Few responses to this. Firstly, we see that as a progressive culture, what we should be doing instead of trying to like push these ideas of like you can wear makeup to make yourself feel beautiful, all these kinds of things, we should be actually looking to break down these kinds of ideals and work on self-improvement without makeup, without all these things. If we're really trying to be progressive and support women and all these groups, like the negating team tries so hard to do, what we should be doing is trying to make people feel comfortable with themselves, regardless of what they have. This is something the negating team can't do, because they're centric around all these ideals of self-care, which leads up to my second response, which is that's not self-care. That's not self-care. Wearing like 7 different types of makeup isn't caring for yourself. You're covering up insecurities, which is that's unhealthy. That's not good for A, your physical health, and B, your mental health, which I will get into in my point. And they also, which is why that is not good. The negating team makes a misrepresentation of what actual self-care is. They bring it up very very slightly, but trying to paint it as making yourself feel beautiful. This is one of the biggest pushes from First Navy here, is about feeling beautiful, making yourself feel beautiful, feel all these things. But you should be able to feel those things, which is what we're advocating for on the From Inside the House. Feeling without having to do external factors. Because at the end of the day, it's all about what's inside your heart and your mind. And this is why, that's why one of the biggest pushes. They also talk about how, they also didn't really talk about how the demographic of who's watching these. They kind of just, the way they framed it is it's centric around older women and disregarding a lot of the younger women that actually watch these TikToks. As we know, TikTok's demographic is based around the younger audience, the younger demographic. This is extremely harmful for those groups, which again, they don't acknowledge, because we see the younger demographic are extremely impressionable. These are young teens that go on TikTok and they see these negative portrayals of self-care. They see these girls getting up in the morning, yeah, I'm beautiful, slay, all these different kinds of things that is that is negative to their mental health, which I'll get into in my split point. Now that I finish the clash, what this means is that a lot of the pushers on feeling beautiful actually don't feel beautiful. They feel like they're not as strong anymore. They lost a lot of their societal material that they tried to bring up in the first place. But now I'm moving on to the split point, but before I do, I will take a POI.
Do trends incentivize producers in any way?
What are we trying to produce? We're trying to make TikTok videos. Well, what is the produce here? Corn? Moving on, onto my point, which is how it actually detriments women's mental health. Sorry, I said that wrong. First, some context. We see in the status quo, women have had to struggle a lot with image, feeling beautiful, feeling confident in themselves. We see throughout history, as the gaming team did bring up, a lot of the times when women wanted to dress up, or make up all these kinds of things, it was either to get the attention of males or to fit society's conformities. And we see this is extremely detrimental. But on the negating side, the way they portray self-care and all these things actually isn't any more progressive than 100 years ago. By running the narrative that they can use this they can use it to feel comfortable within themselves, actually pushes the idea that women are still doing this for other people. Because if you need to wear makeup to feel comfortable with yourself, are you truly comfortable with yourself? If you can't look into your own eyes and say, I'm beautiful, I'm empowered, I'm strong, then really, are you actually any of the things that the negating team claims? We see that, we see on TikTok, a lot of the times, these representations of self-care aren't actually self-care. They're just a bunch of women projecting their own insecurities onto other women. We see these, a lot of these big TikTok creators actually misrepresent what self-care is. We see them dressing up for the day, showing them all their fancy stuff, their new stuff, new clothes, all these kinds of things. Now, we do acknowledge that the negating team does bring up a valid point that there are some actually helpful self-care routine TikTokers on TikTok. But what the sad truth is that a lot of these creators get flushed out by the oversaturation of these creators that are more flashy. They want to look good, show everyone they look good, because that's the way the TikTok algorithm works. It works by seeing the flashy content. You see a girl with all these fancy clothes and all these different things. The TikTok algorithm wants to boost this kind of content. So content that's actually helpful gets drowned out and saturated.
Your way?
Yes.
Cool. What is self-care?
Self-care is looking after yourself. It's not putting on makeup to feel better about yourself. That's the self-care that they stand for. We stand for, brushing your teeth, eating a pizza, being happy, being self-caring. So what this means is that when the TikTok's interpretation of self-care isn't truly what self-care is, the negating team's gonna get up here a second and try to talk about how they still get all the we still get some self-care when they actually don't. Their representation of self-care is very misconstrued and misrepresentative of what they are. What this means is that it plants negative ideals in young and impressionable women, which is what we should not be doing. We shouldn't be letting young women see these views of these women projecting like all these other negative ideals. They're projecting society's version of beautiful, not themselves' version of beautiful. They project all these different sorts of ideals. And then when these ideas get planted into these young women, it negatively affects them because they go ahead, look at themselves and go, oh, why am I not like that? Why do I not have these color eyes or this color nails? They see these and want to be like what they see. Because again, as I said, they're impressionable and young, which leads to a lot of girls feeling down themselves. They lose their self-worth, they feel insecure about themselves, self-harm, all these things because they don't feel like they're enough. You should be able to feel like you're enough, regardless of whether or not you're wearing makeup. Proud to affirm.
I thank the speaker for that speech, and now invite the second speaker from the negating team to continue their team's case.
The affirming team doesn't want to harm impressionable young youth.
Okay, sure, but what is the comparative? We have not heard one. What I will be telling you in my speech is that there simply is no comparative that does not compete with the amazing benefits we get when we empower people. We make makeup accessible to a wide range of people, and we change the narrative that exists in the makeup and the beauty routine producer industry when we have this rise of beauty routines in self-care. So to start off with, I'm just going to start to clarify what we think the comparative looks like when we fail to have this rise. What does it look like? We think that what it looks like is that advertisements don't change. Advertisements continue to perpetuate harmful ideals of what it looks like to be beautiful and what it looks like to have a beauty routine. What else does it look like? It looks like producers continue to have these small ranges of makeup that Ella outlined at first. Furthermore, they continue to buy into the trends that are going to exist on their side of the house, that beauty is simply a thing that is obtained in order to look good in terms of what other people think of you rather than what you think of yourself. Also, we think that we're a virtual world, self-care isn't about enhancing yourself, it's about self-deprivation. This means that it gets much worse on their side of the house because you are self-deprecating. They told us that on their comparative, they're just going to get to the root cause of mental health. We don't know why this is true. Here's a couple of reasons why it isn't. Firstly, we tell you that the root cause is actually external factors that you can't control, such as bullying, such as parental relationships. What can you control? You can control your beauty routine, and you can control it in order to make sure that it is accurate, with your self-care, and actually improve your self-care. And so what do we see at the end of this point? We see that on the comparative, there is no solution. We see that instead, harmful beauty routines continue to be perpetuated, that continue to harm the impressionable young youth that the affirming team wants to hear about.
Point.
Moving on to who is actually perpetuating this trend. They said that people who are perpetuating this trend looks like flashy self-care videos on TikTok. Why is this true? Firstly, we think that it's actually that people who are caring about self-care as mental health, these discussions are personal to people. This means that it tends to be interpersonal relationships with your friends, where you discuss actually, I don't really think that I care about the male gaze anymore. I now care about putting on a bit of glitter, going out with the gals and having a good time and having self-care for myself, rather than caring about this male gaze that you can continue to get on their side of the house. You continue to get this lack of empowerment. What else do we think it looks like? Okay, well maybe if it is on social media, we think it looks like TikTokers who are conveying their personal experiences. If it's about mental health, again, it's a personal issue, and we think people are just unlikely to want to tokenize it on social media through flashy videos. They want to have their voices heard, and people know that they're not going to do that through just simple tokenism. What we see at the end of this, and see that we are just having this tokenistic way of promoting beauty through self-care. Instead, it is actual discussions that mean that we actually get change and we continue to get valuable change in our societies. Moving on to the actual combination of beauty and self-care. The affirming team said that the beauty ideologies are going to look like counting calories and targeting the youth. Counting calories isn't for yourself, very obviously here. Instead, what does this combination of beauty and self-care actually look like? It looks like using makeup to enhance your natural features. Rather than caking it on, you're using it to perhaps you love the shape of your jaw now, and so you're going to use makeup to actually make that look good. I'll take a POI in this moment.
What is the negating side defined as beautiful?
We think that on our side of the house, beauty is something that you feel, whereas on their side, your side of the house, beauty isn't about the self, it's about external factors, and that's where our cases are different. So to continue on about the combination of beauty and self-care, we provided multiple reasons at first at Ella that have gone largely unresponded to, talking about trans youth, trans people, queer people who use self-care to empower themselves. We talked about people of colour who have gone largely unresponded to in the narrative around beauty, and we see that with the rise of self-care, we think that people of colour are more likely to want to prioritise their own self-care. They're unlikely to just accept the fact that beauty companies are only going to have the 5 pale ranges of foundation. They don't stand for that when we have this rise of using beauty for self-care. They want to also prioritise self-care, and that is how we change that on our side of the house. Okay, and then what does this trend actually do? Where does that, what is the connection between having a trend and having the rise of it and actually leading to change in our society? We told, on their side of the house, they basically told us that it leads to a standard of using beauty to fix self issues. What does it actually do? It leads to firstly like normalization of like normalization of using it to care about yourself. Another example that we had at Ella was like the normalization of men using beauty routines in order to like feel good about themselves. Another reason it's like it's no longer seen as excessive to like actually use beauty to care about yourself. You're rather like it's general people around you now when like it's not excessive, they're seeing it as a great thing that you're prioritizing your own self-care. They recognize that people have different ways of using beauty. It's not all just about the harmful ways that the affirming team wants to try and outline. And like thirdly, we see that it just means that it's more visible. This leads to change because it's like more visible for like trans people, as we've talked about throughout this debate, who are extremely important stakeholders who often lack that ability to have self-expression, who can now use beauty routines in a way to make them feel like the self-expression is matching with their internal gender identity. And then like furthermore on like what does this trend do, we heard from them like on impressionable youth is like going to actually like harm them. Why is this? Firstly, we think like youth are on TikTok, they've been on TikTok, so TikTok is for them. This means they're educated about this. This means that they're educated on about like lies and stuff that are being potentially perpetuated. And secondly, we tell you that because it's a trend about self-care, this means that youth are now looking internally at themselves rather than about the external factors. They're more likely to think critically about does it actually apply to them, how are they going to apply this in their real lives, rather than just being impressionable and just being harmed. Moving on to my point about the producers of makeup and their incentives. So for some context, we think that the producers of makeup have had a huge part in perpetuating harmful beauty ideals and harmful beauty standards. How does this change? Firstly, we tell you that producers are following trends on social media. This is a large amount of their voter base, a large amount of their consumer base on social media, youth. And so when they like see the changes and they see the rise of like the idea of wanting to use self-care, what does this change in producers? It means that they now are like using, they're now like trying to produce products that are actually going to like target the smartest, that aren't like perpetuating the harmful like things such as eating disorders, such as like wanting to like just change yourself to look like the one generalized stereotype, such as whitening your skin, that are extremely harmful and like just worsen people's mental health. And like secondly, we tell you like advertisements change. As I earlier outlined, we see like advertisements in like magazines is like a huge part of how like makeup gets displayed. We see historically like this was all like skinny women, like white women, like displaying like the makeup in like in a way that is just harmful to people in general because it's like it lacks their mental health, it's not actually that relatable, and we try to attain this high standard. How does this change? Well, because producers now have to shift their advertisement to target the new audience that cares about using beauty for self-care. And lastly, we tell you that like it just becomes more popular and people are more likely to use the products that prioritize self-care, which means these brands continue to succeed in our society. Side with negating because we actually care about beauty standards.
I thank the speaker for that speech and now invite the third speaker from the affirming team to continue their team's case.
In order for us to win today's debate, we have to prove that a world without cosmetics and self-care is overall better for we believe is the most important demographic, and that is young women, and I'll explain later on. Second of all, something else we need to prove is that makeup is inherently harmful to all people. First off, let me explain why we believe that the most important demographic is these young women. As we all know that the mission cites as a trend. This trend is normally followed by younger people. And who is the ones that mostly take interest in this? The biggest demographic? Women. So we can assume that young women are the biggest, most important, and most affected demographic by this mission. So, first off, I'd like to go over, isn't makeup inherently harmful? what we stated is that it is bad for young women because it creates insecurities. That you may believe that you are pushing out this image where you think, oh, I'm beautiful now. I'm beautiful now. But the key word now. What happened? What about before? Were you not beautiful before? That is what insecurity projection is. We say what we've been stating in our whole case is takes away from the fact that you can't think of yourself as beautiful unless you put on this makeup. And that is what these young girls are being influenced as these you understand that these young people, they're very influenced by what they see on the internet. They normally take things to heart, and normally the influence is pushing this agenda on them, of course, is these people who are generally already pretty, who are already who already meet the standard of prettiness in today's society. One of the pushes we've heard from the opinion team of why makeup is inherently beneficial is that it empowers all groups. And as you stated, the whole foundation of makeup as a whole is built on the fact that it was meant as a way to oppress women for the male gaze. That is what makeup was built on. And if we look at the status quo, if we look at how algorithms work, is that they push out all these old racist stereotypes to the front of the page. That is what these young women are looking at. What I'm trying to say is that young women are looking at old stereotypes that are still being pushed as beauty. So the argument made by the opposing team that we'll see a wide range of all these different people trying on makeup cosmetics it doesn't happen, and if so, it's quite minute compared to the bigger scale that is old stereotypes. One of the responses to a POI asked is that little girls should wear makeup if it makes them look good and makes them feel good. As I stated, that this is inherent harm. It's an inherent harm because what you're doing, this is like a drug. It is like a dopamine buzz. You are putting these young people and you're making them feel like they have to rely on a certain thing to make them look good, to make them feel good. Why aren't we teaching that these young women that they look good naturally? And beauty is done to make yourself feel comfortable. As we see in these trends, it's just the influences projecting the insecurities. Now, what do we have to offer instead on our side? Is that when you remove this avenue of where to look to make yourself feel good, when you remove this on our side, what happens is that these girls normally tend to move to things that make them to more helpful self-care. For example, as my second speaker was stating, that's like brushing your teeth, eating well, all of these. And what we see from the other side is what happens? It's just people that starve themselves, have these eating disorders. And so that's why we believe that makeup is inherently harmful, especially in the instance of it becoming a trend among young people. And now for the next theme is that something that was pushed on by the other team is that we never really gave a counterfactual. We never really gave our own story behind it, or like a world without cosmetics. Now let's look at a world where cosmetics was never even in the picture, and I'll explain to you why that is relevant to our side. Is that cosmetics as a whole, as I proved before, was inherently harmful. So what do we see in this world where cosmetics didn't even exist? Is that people are valued based on their minds and who they are, rather than on their face. Because when you add makeup into the equation, you are adding another factor to be judged upon. And that in this world that we are delivering to you by passing this mission, this imaginary world, we see that people aren't looking at makeup, which was the foundation of sexism. They are looking at this as a root hole, as an escape to making yourself feel happy. So what have I done today for you in this debate? No, firstly prove that makeup is very harmful for all parties involved, and that a world without cosmetics in the first place is a much better world when people can rely on actual self-care treatments such as brushing your teeth, such as eating well, such as etc. etc. But let's even in the best case scenario is that these like if everyone feels good, etc. If you feel good before wearing makeup, is that these stereotypes are still perpetrated on little kids, on these young women. These are the stereotypes of what beauty is. That is what is apparent on their side and will always remain apparent when this becomes a trend. And also in the base case scenario is that girls and all people who wish to use makeup will always seek it as an avenue of happiness. They will always seek it. It's one of the only ways to make them feel better. They ignore a lot of their own personal mental issues and rely on this makeup, this artificial makeup, for a source of happiness, a source of making yourself feel good. When the root problem is, as we both conceded, is actually somewhere else. Makeup just distracts you from the bigger picture. And
QI?
Yes.
What context, apart from self-care, is makeup used?
What context, apart from self-care, what, trying to make yourself attractive for someone else? Is that a good enough answer for you? Sorry, I was just thinking. Even in the past, the sole reasons for makeup was for the male gaze, and that is the justification behind my answer. Because of the foundations makeup was made upon, it was made to attract the male gaze, to find a male figure in your life, to have that validation from men. That is the foundation of makeup. That is why it is inherently harmful. And the world without cosmetics is generally is all filled with benefits, no negatives. Thank you very much.
I thank the speaker for that speech. And now for the final substantive speech in the debate, I invite the third speaker of the negating team to continue their team's case.
In the 2010s, Rihanna founded Fenty Beauty, which allowed people to embrace their natural features. Was one of the first skincare brands to give a diverse range of shades to people of colour. Was one of the first brands to offer plush-size ranges in their clothing to make people feel empowered. That empowerment, as we have told you, down the line, is what self-care is. Not this fabricated, overly complex thing of set of rules and structures that the affirmative team have wanted to characterise today, right? 2 points of question first today. Firstly, what does self-care actually look like at the moment? And secondly, is beauty prioritisation a good thing? But before I do that, I just need to quickly address some things that came out at third speaker. Firstly, they wanted to try and paint their comparative as saying in a world where beauty and cosmetics never existed. I'm sorry, this is a blatant swirling. They actually have to, let me tell you what they actually have to stand for. They have to stand for a world where the narrative of beauty as self-care has not existed. Beauty on their side of the house, before this rise, did exist. It existed with things like tanning beds. It existed with things like, and just things that people used to do back in the day, right? They can't come up here and say that they just reject beauty at all, right? But secondly, they just have to reject the direction that beauty of self-care has taken, right? Now I want to just quickly frame as to what the social climate around beauty currently looks like. we've seen huge changes within the cultural zeitgeist about how we talk about beauty, and this is because of like influential figures such as Tess Holliday getting like large media attention and representation for like how her lifestyle has happened on magazines, right? We believe we've become more accepting of people of different body types, people and people who look a bit different, and that's simply because of things such as normalization and just the public discussion becoming more open. It has become more open, right? Because we believe things such as mental health has also been talked about more, and how physical and mental health have that interconnection. When you treat your mind right, you're more likely to think of your body in a way that is productive, right? On to our first point of clash about what does self-care look like, because they simply wanted to paint this as like excessive diets being promoted. Firstly, we believe that like a diet in a self-care aspect does not look like things that would help harm your overall being. What does actually a diet to self? If they want it, but let's run with them on the thing of diets. Anyways, when we see like self-care diets, we see something that you get a positive long-term benefit from. This looks like maybe eating more protein after you've done exercise, so you can like have that like muscle synthesis can occur quicker, so you're able to like get that benefit, right? Even if the intention is to have a physical outcome, we believe the way in which you get there is going to be better for your physical health. As we brought you at Ella, a lot of people would not wear sunscreen if they did not if their skin, they didn't know their skin was like wrinkly, right? Or like they want their skin to like be clearer or whatever. Because like we believe things like melanoma are quite intangible. They're things people cannot look at and they can't look at because it seems like so out of their realm of possibilities, because we technically don't see people with melanoma like in the media and things like that. Right. They never proved how things like starvation is something considered a self-care routine under the status quo. That's why we went on that point, right? They also wanted to try and say, like, oh no, it's about your mind. You need to like fix what's going up in here before you try and create the external standard of beauty, right? But we believe that rather than like this a self-care routine being an overall fix, which he never claimed it would be on the negating team, we believe if you are going through maybe a one-off bad body image day, the steps that you have to take to like analyze your thoughts and like really break down why that's the case, it's going to take a huge amount of time out of your day at the point in which you can't go on to like maybe go outside and something like that. Yes, we believe those issues should be addressed, but we believe that at the point in time where you're feeling those emotions, you're not able to properly comprehend and maybe break down why you're feeling those emotions because you don't have anyone to talk to. They never gave the comparative as to what the solution would be. But we believe if you are able to simply like do a self-care routine, maybe put on a face mask or something like that, and believe and have the narrative in your mind that you are doing something good for yourself that is able for you to get through that tough times. So when you're feeling a bit better, maybe then you can analyze why you felt like that in the first place. They also wanted to try and say that makeup is generally bad for women because because you're covering up insecurities. Firstly, I would like to reiterate this point about gender expression. This is not a debate about simply about like teenage cis white girls who like want to have a smaller nose bridge. We told you that makeup is actually a way for maybe people who don't identify as the gender they were assigned with to maybe get recognized more, but present more as the gender that they are, right? But we believe this is maybe this is like people wearing makeup in a feminine fashion and maybe wanting to like. So maybe they get addressed by like a certain set of pronouns that they really want to, that other people would address them by, right? This is a tangible benefit because when we tell them, no, this is not when they want to say that no, this isn't self-care, you should just embrace who you are, they cannot embrace who they are at the point in which they cannot engage in activities which will express their truest self. That is really harmful. Secondly, we told you makeup is an art. They wanted to try and come at this like women only wear makeup because it makes them look beautiful. I implore the affirmative team to actually talk to a woman because they have hobbies, they have ambitions, they have like general thoughts and feelings apart from like just like wanting to look good, right? We believe this misogynistic narrative is perpetuated under their side at the point at which they genuinely cannot believe that women could wear makeup for any other reason, right? They want to wear makeup maybe because it's a creative expression or something like that. It's perpetuating very harmfulness. What happens on their side then? When you tell them that they cannot do it because it is just covering up, you are reinforcing the fact that those insecurities do exist, that there are things to be covered up when we say, no, you can wear makeup and not think that you are covering up something. Right. At the end of this point, we believe we have told you why this self-care approach has allowed minorities to empower themselves in a way that they have otherwise been suppressed to do, right? Secondly, onto what if prioritization is good, right? They said that people are going to need products to feel beautiful, right? What does this look like? But what does this look like in the short term, right? We believe people using this, using products to enact self-care is the first step in a long process of self-care. What does this look like? When people have been neglecting their self-care and finally want to try and get their act together, right? We believe it's quite daunting. If you're in a place where you do not feel comfortable with yourself, it's really hard to go out and talk to a therapist because it's just so out there and it's such a it feels like a really big step from where you are from. If they can take these small steps, these small incremental changes, maybe something like brushing their teeth in order, for a specific outcome, then that gives them a goal, gives them an achievable goal, right? I'm going to brush my teeth today in order for me to get whiter teeth, which in turn reduces cavities. We think that is a personal win when we get those minute changes on the ground. They also wanted to try and say self-care is a bit misrepresented online due to the oversaturation of the market, right? But firstly, we believe that videos that are popular, things on TikTok and Instagram, are going to be popular because they they genuinely are relatable to people. You have people who have gone through things a bad image day or other things like that are going to be more likely to relate to the general audiences. It's not just going to be a bunch of people who have never faced these issues before. They're not going to get likes or comments because people were just go buy into it, right? At the end of this debate, we see that we have clearly explained to you how self-care is the first step in a long line of mental changes. Who was the team that gets impacts for minorities on the ground? It's Team Hawke's Bay.
I thank the speaker for that speech, and now we reverse the order, and I welcome the leader of the negating team to deliver their reply.
What this debate comes down to is whether you prefer a world where makeup is used for self-hate or self-care. Right, 3 main points of clash within this debate that I've identified. What is self-care and how it looks for mental health? Secondly, who's promoting these ideas? And thirdly, its effect on the youth of our society. Right, firstly, on what is self-care, right. We heard from Av that it can be anything that makes you feel good about yourself, right, at first. We agreed with this, don't worry about it. We agreed with this, but what we told you is that this looks like different things. It can look like brushing your teeth or washing your face, but it also does look like wearing makeup because this is a form of empowerment, right? We told you at Bex that empowerment is what self-care is about. Self-care isn't necessarily always about dealing with the root issue of your mental health, right? It's for more people than that. It's for literally everyone to feel good about themselves on a day-to-day basis. And we see that beauty routines can be a great way for this. And I'll go on to talk about what we said on that later. All right. First, another thing we heard about the mental health from the affirmative team is the idea that self-care distracts you from mental health issues, right? This is not a bad thing, right? This is what we told you from the start that self-care is for. We're telling you it's small steps to take care of yourself, better your physical health, better your spiritual and emotional health, right? We tell you that beauty can be used as a tool to make you feel better, but it doesn't necessarily, we never claimed that it was a replacement tool for therapy, right? We told you from first that it is for everyday people and it's not necessarily only for people dealing with mental health issues, and we still have under our side of the house places for these people to go, right? Secondly, onto who's promoting these ideas. Now, we see this as a really important part of this debate that the affirmative team didn't really engage with our material on, right? So what we heard from them is the people promoting these ideas are skinny white women, right? Now, this trend on social media is the trend of rise of beauty routines as self-care, right? We see that this is a wide range of people, and I gave you multiple mechanisms at first, and Isabella provided more about why this is, right? It's because we see more and more people using social media than people on magazines, right? So what this leads to is 2 things. Firstly, because we have a more diverse range of people, we're able to see normalising beauty routines for trans and queer people, right? This improves their self-care because they are able to go out into the world feeling like themselves, looking like themselves, and not having people immediately tearing them down because it's become more normalised in these social media trends. It also means that we see wider shade ranges and more accessibility of makeup for people of colour. This went completely unresponded to, right? We told you that huge minority groups all across the world now have access to beauty products that were never available to them in the first place, right? Although there can be issues with cosmetics, and we understand that it's not always a benefit, we tell you that excluding this group historically has only increased this divide, right? We see it being available to them now, which is only beneficial when these people aren't being excluded, right? Alright, thirdly, on its effect on young girls, right? So what we heard is that the rise of these trends has made things worse for young girls, but we have to look at the comparative. Before we saw rise of beauty trends on social media, where a wide range of people were showing what beauty routines they do, all we saw was the same group. We saw people with the same body shape, the same skin colour, perpetrating their ideas of what beauty looked like, and society accepted this. When we had the rise of beauty trends on social media talking about self-care, we see more body types being shown. We see loads of different skin colours. What is better for young girls? We say it's the latter. We want a world where beauty products are used for self-care and not self-hate. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for that speech, and for the final speech of the day, I welcome the AFRA flag.
I think covering self-harm scars with concealer is inherently does not change the fact that scars are still there. Mental damage is still there. I feel like this point of actually restoring mental health among our youth, among young women, was not executed well enough from the negating team. And I think that is the metric that this debate should be judged on, because it is because we both collectively agree that the reason why self-care is a thing and a trend in the first place is because of the terrible mental health upon our youth. So I think that should be weighed very heavily in this debate and should convince you on who should actually win. Okay, so firstly, a few things I want to set up that I don't think the negating team actually ever counted into the debate. Okay, so first of all, on setup, and what actually does self-care look like, right? So I think we clearly flag this at first about what it actually looks like. We clearly give you mechanisms as to why that is the way it is. They live in an idealistic world where self-care is quite literally when you care about yourself, or ways that you protect yourself, but we tell you that's not the way it is in the media. It's not reality. So I don't think that should weigh at all in this debate. Secondly, this debate is not makeup versus no makeup. This is, we clearly explained and set up that we are not against makeup. We are not against women feeling empowered by makeup or feeling beautiful or any of this type of thing. We are against the fact that it is the main route, the main place of accessibility where people go to for self-care. And when people see this continuous trend of this is what self-care looks like, that is all women think it is. That is all they think is going to help them. Okay, so now that I've set up what the debate is actually about for you, I'll get onto two things. Firstly, on beauty inequality and women, and secondly, on the actual comparative. Okay, so on beauty inequality of women and mental health, right? So what do we hear from negating? So we hear a lot about how as times have progressed, we have better representation of minorities, and we have women wearing makeup to feel good about themselves and not because of men. However, I think there are so many external factors, like maybe not having a father figure in your life, maybe not having a guy to go to, maybe always constantly relying on men, that are not actively deal with on their side of the house. Therefore, they do not contender in this debate. There's still external harms do still exist, and so therefore wearing makeup to look good for guys does still exist on their side of the house. Okay, so like secondly, we tell you that secondly we talk about the algorithm, right? And how it pushes people who fit the beauty standard, how it pushes like inherently white, skinny women onto the algorithm, and we tell you how this is inherently harmful to minorities, right? Because this is a point that they actively try to push, right? So let's say we give them the minority point. Even if there's a bunch of minorities who are posting like videos about makeup and do claim to have like to benefit, then we still have those young girls following those harsh diets, following toxic beauty trends, and that is the thing that the debate should be weighed heavily on in the first place, so it doesn't even win them the debate. Okay, and then secondly, on the comparative, right? So what do we hear from side negating? We hear that we never give them a comparative, which is completely false. I give it to you in my first app speech and talk about self-care trends that accurately reflect self-care. I think the reason why negating decides to just ignore this is because their self-care definition is not actual reality. So when we tell you that we're going to focus on actual self-care, they think that this is the current status quo. They think that this is already what's happening. However, we thoroughly explain to you that that is not what's happening. We thoroughly explain to you that it looks like taking breaks, taking advice. We explain to you how this better improves youth mental health. This is why we have won this debate. So proud to be a woman.
I'd like to thank both teams for a great last debate of the day. Now, this will be what's called a silent round, so there's going to be no adjudication. So you're all free to go, get out of here. But shake your hands.
I also. Sorry, you're so mean.